It was a crisp winter morning when my son and I arrived at the slopes, the air sharp and invigorating, promising a day filled with laughter and the thrill of gliding down glistening white hills. My son, Ethan, had only started skiing a couple of months prior but was already captivated by the sport. His enthusiasm was infectious. As a single parent, I cherished these moments spent together, feeling the weight of life melt away with each laugh as we bundled up against the cold. The excitement in his little voice as he beckoned me to a gentler slope warmed my heart. I watched him transform from a cautious beginner into a spirited skier. But as morning gave way to afternoon and we found ourselves at the base of a moderate hill, ready to take on a new challenge, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Ethan, energized by the promise of adventure, shot off ahead of me, his red helmet bobbing in the distance while I followed cautiously, knowing that he needed space to explore but also keeping a watchful eye on his technique. That's when I saw him, a man with a smug expression and a bright orange ski jacket, barreling down the hill. I initially mistook him for simply a confident skier, but I soon realized he had little regard for those around him. As if determined to prove his prowess, he sidestepped Ethan's path as they met in a tumble of limbs and sharp edges. I felt my heart drop as I watched Ethan crumple to the snowy ground, a frightened look on his face. Before I could reach him, the man clumsily skidded to a stop, his attention unfocused as he turned to check his own gear rather than caring for the child he had just collided with. I rushed over, my heart racing, and knelt beside Ethan, my hands brushing against the cold snow as I surveyed him for injuries. Thankfully, he appeared unharmed, but the tears welling up in his eyes rattled me more than any physical ailment could. Anger simmered just beneath the surface as I glanced at the man, who was now sauntering away, clearly unconcerned about the aftermath of his recklessness. "Are you okay, buddy?" I asked Ethan gently, my voice trembling with a mix of relief and rising fury at the man's arrogance. Yet the sting of humiliation mingled with my protective instincts. Was it overreacting to call ski patrol on someone who had scared my child? As I comforted Ethan, I could see he was growing more distressed by the second, overwhelmed by the sudden chaos of the moment. I took a breath and made the call. While waiting for the patrol to arrive, I watched the man laugh and joke with his friends nearby as if Ethan's experience was an amusing side note. The urge to confront him was palpable, but fear held me back, wondering if turning this into a spectacle would only upset Ethan more. The ski patrol arrived relatively quickly, assessing the situation with calm professionalism while I explained what had happened and how the man had disappeared into the background of the day, leaving a ripple of anxiety in his wake. They assured me Ethan was safe and that they would handle the matter, which left me feeling both relieved and a little uncertain about whether I had crossed a line. After they dealt with the incident, Ethan and I decided to take a break, curling up at a nearby cabin with steaming mugs of hot cocoa. As we sat there, I watched him slowly return to his bubbly self, animatedly discussing how he wanted to tackle the next slope while I mentally sifted through my choices. Had I been too harsh? Did intervening really matter? The warmth of the drink settled over me as Ethan's laughter filled the air. My heart was still heavy, but the fuller sense of parental protection began to outweigh it. When we returned to the slopes, I kept him close, monitoring every wave of excitement or fear reflected on his face. The thought could not help but linger: should I have chosen a different route? The incident haunted me, a nagging feeling not just of vigilance but of questioning my decisions, stacking against the joy of our day. That evening, while tucking Ethan into bed, I finally asked him what he thought about the day, and he smiled brightly, recounting the delicious cocoa and the fun of trying out new runs. "Did you see how I turned my skis to avoid that giant snow bump?" he asked. Relief washed over me. Perhaps in the midst of chaos, our little adventures had forged lessons that neither of us would forget. Updates floated through my mind as I reflected on the afternoon, pondering about talking to someone at the lodge about safety for the kids but largely trusting that the ski patrol had taken appropriate action. The next morning, I sat idly, scrolling through a local social media forum when I stumbled upon a post titled something like AITA for being a reckless skier. The familiar orange jacket leapt off the screen. It was the man from the previous day, recounting the incident but portraying himself as a misunderstood thrill seeker who had been wronged. I chuckled softly and felt a wave of empowerment wash over me, reinforcing that I did the right thing for my son. The story rolled through my mind as I sipped my coffee. Life was often a toss-up of what's right or wrong, but when it involved safeguarding my child, I knew I'd take the ski patrol every time. As I sat there, watching the steam rise from my mug, my thoughts danced between the warmth of the cafe and the icy chaos of yesterday's events. The mountain air clung to me still, its crispness a sharp reminder of that too-close encounter. My son, Jason, had been so excited to hit the slopes for the first time. The anticipation was evident in his wide-eyed, bouncing energy as we strapped on our skis, the bright sun glistening off the powdery white snow. I had watched him glide cautiously at first, a little awkward but admirable in his determination. I couldn't help but grin as he cautiously maneuvered between the ever-present shadows of seasoned skiers. That grin had faded quickly when the orange-clad man hurtled down the mountain like a rogue missile, his skis gleaming with reckless intentions. There was no slowing down, no effort to avoid my son, and the moment became a blur. I remember calling out, but my voice was swallowed by the wind as Jason was knocked off his feet, landing with an audible thud, his little body tumbling into a snowdrift. The panic that washed over me was paralyzing. I rushed to my boy, my heart hammering, unwilling to look away from the damage that could have been done. Thankfully, he just had a couple of bruises that would fade, but the feeling of fear lingered long after. As ski patrol whisked the man away, their disbelief mirrored my own. He was so enthralled by the thrill of skiing that he had overlooked his responsibility to other skiers. The disbelief turned into anger when I saw him posting about the incident online, morphing the narrative to paint himself as a victim instead of the man who had charged through a family day like a bull in a china shop. It made my blood boil, that arrogant dismissal of consequence. I pondered whether I was too quick to call ski patrol, but my internal mantra of protectiveness soothed my guilt. I had acted out of fierce love for my son. That night, I spoke to Jason about the importance of safety and respect on the slopes. He nodded, his bright spirit unscathed by the day's events. "Dad, he just didn't see me. I still want to ski," he declared, determination lining his young brow. A mixture of pride and fear twisted in my chest. A kind of courage blossomed in him that I deeply admired, even if it made my heart race with worry. As days passed, I kept peeking into the online forums where the orange jacket guy had been, watching him twist words to become a skiing legend when he was just a reckless distraction. Then, something shifted, the comments began taking a turn. More skiers echoed our experience, pointing out his reckless behavior and demanding accountability. It felt comforting to know that I wasn't alone in my assessment. The twisted perspectives attempting to absolve his actions had no traction. It seemed everyone else saw it as clearly as I had. I even gathered the courage to participate, sharing how his actions had endangered my son and that safety should always trump thrill-seeking thrills. Months later, as I skimmed through the old posts, I reached one that caught my eye. AITA for apologizing to a parent after reflecting on my reckless skiing? It was the same orange jacket, though this time the tone was remorseful. The author spoke candidly about self-reflection and growth since that fateful day. I couldn't help but shake my head, the past merging awkwardly with the present. Though it was gratifying to see someone take accountability, a part of me resented the years lost to careless decisions. I closed my laptop and turned my gaze into the depth of winter as it changed to dusk. Jason was at the window, captivated by the falling snow, his laughter a bright star amidst the swirling white. Perhaps life was less about the transgressions of others and more about how we chose to love and nurture, to build characters and let them shine. The glow in my son's eyes was enough to make me forget the orange jacket and all it represented. The love I held for him ignited my understanding that we all fall, we all learn, and sometimes we must confront the slopes for the world to truly thrive. As the evening settled in and the warmth of the fireplace flickered shadows on the walls, I found a sense of calm wrap around me, interlaced with the soothing sounds of the crackling logs. I watched Jason dance around the room, his little feet gliding over the polished wood like they had learned to ski themselves, each movement a testament to unbridled joy. It was in these quiet moments, away from the chaos of the ski slopes and the bitterness of confrontation, that I found clarity. The way he playfully mimicked the ski patrol with a makeshift rescue backboard, a cushion from the couch draped over his shoulders, made me smile. My heart warmed with the thought that the incident on the slopes, while harrowing, had embedded itself in a lesson of safety and respect that I hoped would shape Jason's adventures in the years to come. With a steaming mug of cocoa in hand, I settled into the couch, letting the aroma wrap around me like a cozy blanket. My phone vibrated, and I instinctively grabbed it, half expecting another distasteful rant from the orange-jacketed antagonist. Instead, it was a notification from Reddit. Jason's antics had drawn the attention of my post, a flurry of comments that ranged from supportive to downright accusatory. I chuckled softly, reminded of how the public realm could partition experiences so neatly into heroes and villains, spectator and participator. But as I read through the comments, a sense of community enveloped me. Many echoed my thoughts, recognizing that in the world of parenting, we don't always have time for gray areas. Suddenly, my musings were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. I glanced towards Jason, who had momentarily halted his playful theatrics, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. I opened the door to find Leah, our neighbor, with her 2 kids, bundled up against the cold. "We heard you had hot cocoa," she said, grinning widely. Her laughter melded with the sounds of snowfall, brightening our home even more. The kids rushed in, their cold cheeks rosy and eyes sparkling. Jason's laughter reignited as he pulled them into his playtime adventure, and the atmosphere shifted. In the midst of our newfound gathering, I realized that life's slopes could be treacherous, but they also gave rise to moments of incredible joy and connection. I welcomed Leah and her children, brewed fresh cocoa, and chuckled as they retold their ski adventures and mishaps. Each tale unfolded as gently as the snowflakes twirling outside, a reminder of how laughter and camaraderie could soften the sharp edges of an unfortunate day. As the night progressed, we worked together to build a fort with blankets and pillows, creating a sanctuary of laughter in our living room. I could see how these interactions knitted the fabric of community and camaraderie, and I forgot the weight of the perpetrator's orange jacket as I engaged with the now familiar chaos. Every fit of giggles, every slight mischief, and even the way the kids tossed snowballs wove a thread of warmth that contrasted against the chilly world outside, reminding me that while I had stood firm on the slopes, ensuring my son's safety, my real battle was here, fostering a space free of judgment and full of love. The evening dragged on, fading into night, with stories exchanged and cocoa cups emptied. Just as I was beginning to feel drowsy, my phone buzzed again. The thread on my earlier post had exploded with notifications. I glanced at the screen with fatigue but curiosity. More stories shared, sympathies and remembrances of their own cultish orange jacket encounters, and unexpected words of encouragement. One comment, in particular, struck me: "Every time you stand up for your child, the world gets a little bit brighter." I smiled, taking a deep breath. It felt like a love letter to every parent grappling with their role in protecting their children amidst the unforgiving terrain of the world. Settled back into the couch, I closed my eyes, letting the sounds of laughter swirl around me like the snow outside, enveloping me in a cocoon of warmth. I realized that we must all navigate our slopes, but what mattered more than the falls or daring escapes was how we choose to love, nurture, and advocate for those we hold dear. That night, as Jason drifted off to sleep surrounded by remnants of his excitement, I too surrendered to the calm of the moment, feeling reassured that each step I took for him was a step towards fostering resilience and strength, something I hoped would carry him even beyond the ski slopes. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the email arrived, its subject line gleaming like a neon sign in my inbox: "Birthday party invite." My heart sank slightly, not because the party itself was unwelcome, but for the title attached to it: Ava's 10th birthday bash. You see, Ava, my only daughter, had been living with her mother since our bitter divorce 2 years earlier, a divorce that had taught me both the depths of heartbreak and the importance of fighting for what is right. We had agreed on shared custody and tried our best to keep things cordial for her sake, but time had dulled the edges of our cooperation. Excitement mixed with unease brewed in my chest as I opened the email. In it, Ava's mother, Sarah, had laid out the details of the party she was throwing at her new boyfriend's house, complete with a rented bouncy castle and a promise of cupcakes that were to die for. I smiled at the thought of my daughter laughing with her friends, but the invitation felt like a bitter reminder of the distance that now existed between us. I hadn't been included in the planning, had no input on who was invited, or, more importantly, whether I would be invited to join the festivities. Memories of exchanges between us about joint decisions flooded my mind, laced with that familiar bitterness. I remembered that time we argued fiercely about what to tell Ava during family discussions, how quickly we'd gone from discussing her future to fights over holiday weekends. I took a deep breath, letting the air settle before replying. "Dear Sarah," I typed, "thank you for the invitation. However, I frankly feel conflicted about taking Ava to her party." I paused and blinked at the screen, wondering if I was overthinking this, my finger hovering above the send button. Would I be the asshole for refusing? Would I be denying my daughter joy? After some deliberation, I hit send, feeling both a thrill of liberation and a hint of regret. In a matter of hours, Sarah replied, her words sharp and dismissive. "You're being ridiculous, Matt. Ava needs to see both her parents celebrating her birthday. You can't keep trying to be a martyr." Her words struck like an arrow, and I fired back an equally heated response, caught in that deteriorating cycle of miscommunication where nothing ever seemed to get resolved. The conflict pushed me into an emotional spiral as I questioned my role in Ava's life. I could hear her laughter over the phone on weekends we spent together, see the delight in her eyes during our shared trips to the park and the thrill of watching movies on lazy afternoons. I wanted to fight for that connection without it feeling like a battlefield, yet Sarah's reluctance to compromise left me feeling vulnerable and unsure. Days passed without further correspondence, and my anxiety turned into a persistent ache in my chest. Each moment spent in silence echoed louder than the last, leaving me haunted by thoughts of Ava blowing out her candles without me there to cheer her on. The night before the party, I lay in bed, wrestling with my choices. My mind raced back to those fleeting moments of happiness we once shared, grasping for a glimmer of hope. I recalled our annual rituals, how we made her birthday a grand occasion, replete with silly games and heartfelt surprises. I longed for us to return to that simple joy, the laughter shared between family, but reality painted a different picture, one of estranged relationships and unspoken grievances. In the early hours of the morning, I finally decided to call Sarah, feeling resolute. I dialed her number, the sound of it ringing echoing like a drumming heartbeat. "Hey," she answered, her voice clipped and guarded. "I know it's early, but can we talk?" I asked, choosing my words with caution. Her sigh broke the silence, a long-held breath released into the phone. We exchanged our feelings, our resentments, an emotional tug-of-war of apologies and accusations, laying bare the path that had led us down this difficult road. After what felt like an eternity of talking, I reached a tranquil point of acceptance. "I want Ava to be happy," I finally said. "I just want to feel included in her life, even if it's complicated." There was a pause filled with vulnerability on the line before Sarah softly spoke. "Let's make sure she knows we're both here for her. You can come to the party, I want her to have both parents in her life." The relief that flooded through me was overwhelming, like a drowning sailor finally surfacing to breathe. The next day, I arrived at the party, unsure of what to expect, my heart pounding not from fear, but from nervous anticipation. As I stepped into the backyard, the sound of laughter enveloped me, and I saw Ava, dressed in a vibrant pink dress, her smile widening as she spotted me. It felt as if time stood still, and in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. There were still obstacles to navigate, shared custody would always be a delicate dance, but we were trying our best, learning along the way, brick by brick, to rebuild the trust that had been lost. As I watched her blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and family, I realized the most valuable gift of all was the experience of unity, the warmth of love shared, even amidst distance and misunderstanding. A part of me still questioned if I had been wrong in sending that initial email, or if my bravado had cost me opportunities, but in Ava's shimmering eyes, I saw hope, and I knew I was no longer alone in this journey. Update: a few weeks after the party, Sarah and I had started attending a family counseling session. It was one of those stepchild scenarios in the modern age, a tug-of-war between two parents still grappling with recent wounds. Upon recommendation from the counselor, we embarked on this journey together, to communicate better, to understand each other as co-parents. We even laughed about the birthday debacle, realizing it had been a miscommunication wrapped in hurt feelings. In the end, what mattered was that through our trials and tribulations, Ava was thriving, and it urged us towards newfound cooperation, building bridges rather than walls. The journey was ongoing, but for the first time, it felt like I was no longer standing at the edge, but rather stepping gently onto the path ahead, guided by the laughter of a child who would always remind me of the beauty of resilience and love. As I settled into this new chapter of co-parenting, I found myself reflecting often on those tumultuous months leading to Ava's last birthday. The air in our home had shifted, it no longer felt heavy with unspoken grievances but rather light with the potential for mutual understanding. I vividly recalled the night after we had come to our resolution, how we huddled together in the living room, the flickering candlelight casting warm shadows as we all laughed at old family videos. The laughter of Ava, ringing clear and joyous, was infectious, her innocence a gentle reminder that often our adult worries seem trivial in her world. With her small hand clasped tightly in mine, I realized how simple life could be when it was guided by love and honesty, and I could only hope that this newfound warmth would continue to envelop us as we all navigated our separate but intertwined lives. Despite everything, those moments of vulnerability led to deeper conversations with my ex-wife, Rachel. I had always respected her as a co-parent, but now I appreciated her humanity in ways I hadn't before. Our late-night discussions flowed naturally, each of us peeling back layers of our hearts that we had long held concealed, all because of that one birthday party. It astonished me how a single event, one that had felt so incredibly pivotal at the time, could pivot the course of our co-parenting journey so dramatically. We learned to reach out to each other more, to share our anxieties about Ava's growth, her school, and her relationships with friends. Most importantly, we took turns checking in, not just on Ava, but on ourselves, too. This, in turn, opened a door to discussions about how we wanted to celebrate Ava's next birthday. Instead of leaping into a full-blown party with all the trimmings, we decided to involve her in the planning. One evening, I found an old box filled with colorful craft supplies and, just like that, an idea was born. With a few art supplies and her unfiltered imagination, Ava took to planning her birthday like a seasoned event organizer. I smiled while looking at her sketches of a backyard picnic, whimsical animals made from recycled paper, and an entire theme dedicated to her favorite fairy tale characters. Rachel and I shared fond gazes, both proud and a little amused by our daughter's youthful ambition. We both knew she had inherited our tendency to elaborate far beyond what was necessary. As the day approached, what struck me most was the undeniable camaraderie building between Rachel and me. The only struggle left was to find a suitable day when our schedules aligned, which, surprisingly, we accomplished without any friction, something I would have previously thought impossible. Ava's birthday party arrived, and the day was as enchanting as she had envisioned it. We sat beneath the sprawling oak tree in our backyard, a haven of green and gold light, the air thick with the aroma of freshly baked cupcakes and the sound of laughter. Friends began to trickle in, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me as I watched Ava greet her guests with open arms. That familiar feeling, a blend of pride, love, and connection, blanketed everything that day, allowing me to recall the essence of our family, not the struggles but the resilience that woven us together. As the sun dipped, painting the sky in shades of orange-red-violet, I found myself smiling at Rachel across the yard. In that moment, no bitterness echoed between us. Just the simple joy of shared laughter intertwined with parental pride, a strange yet welcomed friendship that had grown from the ashes of our previous disagreements. When the last guest left, we both plopped down on the grass beside Ava, who had just begun to doze off, her face flushed with happiness. "You think she had a good time?" Rachel asked, her voice a soft murmur punctuated by the leaves whispering overhead. "I think she loved it," I replied, glancing down at my daughter, whose dreams must surely have been filled with whimsical adventures. As dusk settled in, it dawned on me just how much had changed. We exchanged a knowing look, words unspoken but shared between us, an understanding that sometimes miscommunication had the power to destroy and to strengthen. My heart swelled with hope, and in that luminous twilight, I firmly believed that through this journey of vulnerability, forgiveness, and growth, we were continually transforming, not just as parents but as individuals striving to give our daughter the best of ourselves. I looked at Ava, her tiny fingers clutching a party favor, and realized that it was the laughter, the love, and the resilience that truly mattered. The path we walked would undoubtedly have its rocky moments, but it was a road I felt ready to tread, knowing I was not alone. And with that reflection nestled close to my heart, I whispered a silent vow to embrace the unfolding future with open arms and a heart full of hope. Update: just a few months later, life took an unexpected turn once again. Rachel had recently mentioned she was considering moving to a nearby city for a fantastic job opportunity, something she had always dreamed of but hesitated to pursue. Her desire eventually put us in the position of needing to recalibrate our co-parenting arrangement. Yet this time, it felt different. Rather than spiraling into anxiety over potential conflicts, we sat down again, just like before, and talked it through. Rachel expressed her concerns about how a move might affect Ava, and I shared my worries about how it would affect our bond as a co-parenting team. Our open dialogue, now woven through trust, made all the difference. We both welcomed the idea of working together, ensuring Ava felt anchored no matter how far she or either of us traveled. Love may have its complexities, but through it all, I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that understanding and communication were the threads that held our family together, no matter the distance. As the weeks rolled into months, the lessons we learned lived with us, blossoming in the everyday moments of parenting. Rachel and I found ourselves sharing more than just birthday plans. We were navigating the intricacies of co-parenting with a newfound sense of unity. It was during these quieter moments, those unguarded conversations over the phone or the casual exchanges when we dropped off Ava, that I realized our relationship was stabilizing. One afternoon, while the sun poured through the kitchen window, I was prepping lunch when Ava ran up to me, her tiny feet barely making a sound on the polished floor. With a big smile, she held out a crayon drawing depicting a sprawling family tree with Rachel and me as the roots, strong and intertwined, and our branches reaching out to represent her growing circle of friends and family. My heart swelled as I realized how much she understood, even if her comprehension was wrapped in innocence. "See, Daddy? Even if we don't live together, we're still a family," she chirped, her eyes sparkling with belief. I couldn't help but feel gratitude for that childlike clarity, the kind that often eludes adults. In that moment, I understood the importance of fostering Ava's perception of love. She was the lens through which our past struggles were being reframed. Rachel and I decided to introduce a weekly family night, where the three of us would indulge in activities ranging from movie marathons to board games, each session acting as a reminder of our commitment to Ava. As the weeks turned into playful banter and warm evenings of laughter, I started to feel a sense of normalcy that had once eluded us. One evening, after a particularly spirited round of charades where Ava had us all rolling on the floor, Rachel turned to me with a smile. "I guess this is what it means to build a family," she said. There was no hint of bitterness or past grievances, just the simple acknowledgement of what we were creating together. But life, in its unpredictable manner, threw a curveball our way. Rachel received an unexpected job opportunity that required her to relocate across the country. I was taken aback, my initial reaction awash with the fear of change. Ava adored her routines. Would this disrupt everything we had built together? When I approached Rachel about it, my usual calm facade cracked. "How can we maintain this?" I stammered. "What if it pulls Ava between us?" Rachel listened intently, her face a mixture of emotions, reflecting my own fears back at me. The weight of our earlier promises weighed heavily on us both. I could see the reality of her move grappling with our newfound understanding. We took the weekend to exhaustively discuss everything, a process that felt both laborious and liberating as we laid all our concerns on the table. The fear of creating instability in Ava's life loomed large, but the prospect of Rachel's career growth was undeniably an opportunity that was hard to frown upon. Slowly, we began to explore what that transition might look like. It's amazing how the words we exchanged began to heal the initial shock, transforming my apprehensions into conversations about alternating weekends and phone calls. We envisioned crafting a schedule that would prioritize Ava's needs, and here was where Rachel's earlier point about communication shone again. The idea was for her to be rooted in both our hearts, irrespective of geographical lines. With every discussion we had, I felt the fabric of our co-parenting strategy become more intricate yet resilient. The decision was ultimately made: Rachel would take the job, and we would commit to a communication plan that would keep any rift at bay. The weeks leading up to her departure were packed with emotional farewells, open dialogues again, and loads of reinforcement for Ava. I felt bittersweet pride as I watched Rachel and Ava playing together in the park one last time before the move. A fleeting moment of nostalgia swept through me. I thought of all the birthdays, the small squabbles, and those beautiful family nights. "We're still a family, right?" Ava asked innocently, her voice filled with concern. I knelt down, unafraid to share my heart. "Absolutely, sweetheart. No matter where we are." It felt true to the depths of my soul, and she smiled, radiating the reassurance of a child's uncomplicated wisdom. As I drove home that day, the weight lingered, but it felt so different now. Sundays would be our pocket of time to celebrate culture through shared meals, FaceTiming during story time, and sending messages across the miles, maintaining our rhythm. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. I could not predict what our family's dynamics would look like moving forward, but I had faith that as long as love anchored us, we would flourish. In the end, distance could not dilute what we had built. Through all the anxieties and adjustments, I knew that understanding, grace, and persistent love would knit us together, no matter the miles apart. After all, family is less about physical proximity and more about the bonds we choose to nurture with each other, and as I lay down that night, I felt grateful for the tangled, beautiful journey we were embarking upon together, knowing that Ava would always be our guiding star, reminding us of the resilience that love inspired. It's funny how a seemingly small, mundane moment can spiral into something significant in your life. I never thought tossing out a pillow would lead me to question the very fabric of my marriage. My name is Ethan, and I've been happily married to my wife, Lily, for nearly 6 years. We have those comfortable, cozy routines, the shared cups of coffee on a Sunday morning, evening walks after dinner, and the predictable rhythm of our lives together. But lately, there was something about our shared space that had begun to grate on my nerves, particularly one fluffy, lavender-colored pillow that we kept on our bed, a gift from her grandmother. I should probably mention that it was one of those pillows that carried a constant, overwhelming scent of lavender, almost sickening at times, masking the sense of my own comforting cologne that lingered in the air. At first, it was just a quirky part of our home, but over the months, its presence turned from soothing to suffocating, especially as we prepared for a week-long family stay. I could feel my irritation bubbling beneath the surface whenever I caught sight of it. It was always there, like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. The night before her family was set to arrive, I found myself tossing and turning, the pillow's scent invading my dreams, wrapping me like a shroud. At 2 in the morning, exhausted and desperate, I finally snapped. I can still vividly recall the sensation of the pillow softening in my grip as I carried it down the hallway, heart racing, my mind flooded with conflicting emotions. I felt both reckless and relieved as I swung open the door to the storage room, a small space filled with boxes and old mementos, and pitched the pillow in. It sank into the darkness like a weight off my shoulders, and I felt a jolt of sick satisfaction. I spent the next few hours in a haze of guilt and triumph, thinking about everything else I could say about our relationship, but instead, her family arrived the next morning, and Lily hadn't even noticed her pillow was gone in the chaos of greeting them. But here's where things get tricky. As the day went on, I could see the tiniest hints of concern flickering in her expression. She searched our bedroom, rifling through drawers and shrugging off the chatter of her family, who were blissfully unaware of the mounting tension. I felt that gnawing sense of unease, the kind that creeps into the bathroom mirror when you stand alone, staring at your reflection, questioning your most recent choices. When she finally confronted me, not long after dinner, her eyes were wide, searching for reassurance in my expression. "Have you seen my lavender pillow?" The question, innocent yet loaded, hung in the air between us. I hesitated but ultimately confessed, feeling the flush of shame creeping up my neck. Her silence was deafening, the confusion morphing into something sharper. Instead of comfort, I had thrown away a part of her history, a small piece of her family. And I could see the quiet devastation etched in the lines of her face. Our subsequent conversation was heavy with emotion. I could sense the spiral of hurt in her voice, revealing how that pillow had connected her to memories of her childhood, evenings spent reading on her bed, and the warmth of her grandmother's embrace. My heart sank deeper with each story she shared, a gentle reminder that sometimes love can be tangled within the tiniest details of our lives. I apologized repeatedly, feeling utterly foolish for treating her cherished memory so carelessly. We stayed up late that night, navigating through laughter and tears, acknowledging the fragility of our emotions. I never imagined that a pillow could spark such vulnerability, forcing us to confront things we often take for granted. After we reached an understanding, we decided together to continue looking for that pillow, even if it meant rummaging through the heap of nostalgia and dust lurking in that storied room. The tension eased slowly, like steam from a boiling kettle, and I found peace in the act of searching for it together. It was a journey that brought us closer, reaffirming our commitment despite the initial bump in the road. Eventually, we unearthed the pillow, still rich with its lavender scent and the remnants of a once frayed. We laughed as I improvised a half-hearted excuse about its coziness and discarded it into another box, recognizing its significance but opting for a new beginning instead. In the weeks that followed, I realized that sometimes, it's the little things that matter most and remind us we're a part of something larger. Our relationships are built on layers of memories, some heavy and some light, but all woven together in unexpected ways. And even now, whenever that scent wafts through the room, it's a reminder not just of a pillow or a memory, but how heartfelt confrontation and vulnerability can mend things we didn't even realize were breaking. Update: a few months later, I stumbled upon a similar lavender pillow during a visit to a local store, and it stirred something unexpected inside me. With a gentle hesitation, I decided to buy it and, upon presenting it to Lily with a hesitant smile, I felt the warmth return to our bedroom. She took one look at it and burst into laughter, realizing the full circle nature of our pillow saga. The new lavender pillow graced our bed, not merely as an item of comfort but as a reminder of our journey, and now, whenever I catch a whiff of it in the air, I smile at how such a simple object can hold the weight of love and understanding. As the days progressed, the lavender pillow became more than just a comfort item. It seemed to weave itself into the fabric of our daily lives, an unspoken vow that we had made to each other to communicate openly and to embrace quirks, whether they be mine or Lily's. I found myself taking more time to appreciate the little moments we shared. Each evening, as we slid into bed, I noticed how the soft texture of the new pillow cradled our heads just right, its soothing scent enveloping us both in an atmosphere that fostered intimacy and warmth. One night, I turned to Lily, illuminated by the soft glow of our bedside lamp, and found her lost in thought, her fingers gently tracing the new pillow's edge. It seemed as if she was contemplating the journey we had just traversed. I asked her what was on her mind, and after a moment's pause, she admitted that she had been reflecting on how our pillow saga had inadvertently highlighted deeper truths about our relationship, how our unique little battles often revealed the ways we could grow together. She smiled then, that beautiful, sincere smile that lit up her eyes, and I felt a wave of fondness wash over me. We began to share stories from our past, laughing at the silly, stubborn moments we'd both experienced in our previous relationships, even during awkward shopping trips where preferences clashed like magnets with different polarities. Each anecdote drew us closer. I was reminded of how important it is to embrace and accept those differences, rather than let them fester into something that could harm the bond we nurtured. Days turned into weeks, and soon the pillow became a staple in our routine. It was a silent witness to our late-night conversations, whispered secrets, and gentle arguments over whose turn it was to choose a movie. We found harmony not only in our togetherness, but also in the acceptance of our divergences. The lavender aroma became a soothing constant in our home, an aromatic thread that knitted us closer every day. Yet, like all relationships navigating their intricate paths, we did stumble upon a moment of disquietude. One stormy evening, I returned home to find the light from our kitchen casting a warm glow through the window, a familiar sight that usually warmed my heart, yet on this particular night, something felt off. As I stepped inside, I noticed the electric tension in the air. Lily was seated at the kitchen table, her gaze fixed on the window, and I could see her shoulders slightly tense as I approached. Her silence spoke volumes. She seemed deep in thought, but frustration simmered just beneath the surface. I sat down across from her, the storm outside mirroring the brewing conflict between us. "What's wrong?" I asked gently, as I reached across to touch her hand. She pulled her fingers away, an act that stung unexpectedly, making my heart race with anxiety. "It's just. Sometimes, I feel like you still don't really get it, you know?" Her words hung heavily in the air. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, unsure of how to respond, but I pressed on. We spent hours unraveling our feelings, with the lavender pillow silently softening the edges of our tumultuous discussion. It was during that exchange that I realized how vital it was to keep the channels of communication open. My fear of conflict had often led me to be passive, while Lily's sensitivity to every little slight sometimes made her seem unyielding. Together we acknowledged the growing pains that had followed us from relationship to relationship. I wanted to assure her that I was committed to understanding her emotions, but my own insecurities struggled to surface amidst the haze of tension. We finally stood on a precipice. Either side could lead to deeper understanding or further resentment. After a long, watchful silence, I finally pulled the lavender pillow close to me and smiled weakly. "Maybe this pillow has more lessons for us than we thought," I said, chuckling softly, trying to diffuse the tension. Lily snorted in response, breaking the heaviness that had wrapped around us like a fog. As the laughter bubbled between us, we recognized the absurdity of letting such small misunderstandings amplify into something bigger. Our hearts lightened, and the glow in the room shifted. We promised to keep talking, to share our feelings no matter how uncomfortable they felt. With that, we drew together, the lavender pillow positioned as a bridge rather than a barrier. It was at that moment, nestled together in shared vulnerability, that the pillow gained yet another layer of meaning, not just a symbol of comfort, but a reminder of the importance of facing conflict together, wrapped up in love and understanding. There was something powerful in that concession. I couldn't help but feel grateful for the lessons still ahead of us, knowing that through it all, our lavender pillow would remain steadfast, soaking up the experiences of both laughter and tears, ever present on our journey together, guiding us toward deeper connection. As the days turned into weeks, the lavender pillow transformed from a mere item on our bed into an emblem of our evolving relationship. Each time I settled down at night beside Lily, I could feel the softness of that pillow cradling not just our heads, but our unspoken hopes and vulnerabilities. There were evenings when we discussed everything from work frustrations to dreams for the future, our heads resting upon it as if it were a shared confidant. It seemed like that pillow had the unique ability to diffuse tension, allowing us to speak openly, something we hadn't always done in the past. One particularly cool autumn night, when the leaves outside were swirling in the brisk wind, I decided to surprise her with a small picnic in our living room, laying out a blanket and preparing some of her favorite snacks. The casual atmosphere, punctuated with laughter, created a backdrop that felt almost magical. That evening, we talked more deeply than I had anticipated, delving into the very reasons behind our arguments, our dreams, and what we actually wanted for ourselves as individuals, and for our life together as a couple. It felt liberating, to be so open, and I found myself reflecting on the pillow's role as a catalyst for our newfound honesty. I shared my worries about our future, the concerns that gnawed at me daily, fears of stagnation, and unmet expectations, while she confessed her own feelings of inadequacy, the sometimes suffocating anxiety of living up to the ideal of being the perfect partner. We both laughed at our shared insecurities, realizing that the very things we thought made us incompatible were often the realities we both faced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, our conversation transitioned to lighter topics, such as that ridiculous pillow fight we'd had the week prior and her silly matriarchal instinct that had propelled her to guard her beloved cushions. I could see the glow of affection in her eyes as she recounted the moment she had chased me around the room, the carefree laughter reverberating off the walls, the moments I realized how resilient laughter can be in the face of even the toughest arguments. However, the deeper truth was that we were still learning, still navigating each other's intricate emotional landscapes with tender care. And it wasn't just about us. It became apparent that resolving our conflicts was essential for creating a safe space where our relationship could thrive. A few months later, as winter descended and we bundled up against the chilly winds, I felt a renewed sense of connection building between us. We'd found an equilibrium, largely thanks to that humble lavender pillow, which kept us reminded that love is not just about the easy moments. We often refer back to the day I had tossed the old one, laughing that it was the catalyst for change, a moment that pushed us to confront rather than sweep aside our frustrations. Eventually, the time came to celebrate our anniversary, and I wanted it to be special, a reflection of the journey we had embarked upon together. Little did I know that this night would not only mark our love but also balm old wounds. Preparing an intimate dinner at home, I set the table with the dishes we had shared on our very first date, recreating that familiar sense of nostalgia. After dinner, I surprised her with small gifts that told our story, simple, meaningful tokens that played into our shared history, the book she'd recommended that had remained unread on my shelf, a photograph of us taken on a rainy day when we had huddled under a single umbrella, and of course, another lavender pillow, this one softer than the last. As she unwrapped her final gift, the laughter bubbled up, and in that moment, it was evident that we'd not only survived our challenges but had also learned how to love more authentically. Because it wasn't about the gifts, or the pillows, it was about the memories behind them, the discoveries we had made about who we were, and the promise of learning more together. As I looked into her sparkling eyes, I realized that every pillow, every struggle, every moment was infused with the essence of us, reminders that, just like the lavender, our love could flourish in all seasons, rooted in respect, empathy, and a pinch of humor. It was comforting. It was ours. And I felt utterly ready for whatever the future would bring, knowing that a pillow wouldn't just rest on our bed, but would always be there to soften our disagreements and cradle our dreams together. It started on an ordinary Tuesday evening, the kind that melts into your memory like butter on warm bread. My friend Lily had come over for dinner. She was what people called a people person, always bubbling with enthusiasm, her wide smile lighting up any room. I'd known her for years, but I was beginning to worry that her inquisitiveness was turning into a kind of obsession, especially concerning my girlfriend, Maya. Upon our first introduction a few months ago, Maya had been shy, and who could blame her? She was stepping into a circle of friends who had known each other for ages, and I felt a twinge of protectiveness towards her. While Lily greeted her with a warm embrace and relentless questioning, I brushed it off, thinking perhaps it was just Lily being herself. But over time, I saw how Maya's shy demeanor would slip into discomfort whenever Lily would pry into her personal life, questions about her family, her job, even the small scars on her wrists that she often covered with long sleeves. I could sense Maya's unease but tried to ease it by changing the subject or steering the conversation in a different direction. That night, I made pasta, a simple but delectable dish that usually brought us all together. However, the tension simmering beneath the surface lingered like an uninvited guest. Halfway through dinner, Lily leaned across the table, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "So, Maya, why don't you tell me about the therapy you were in? I've been dying to know what that was like." I saw Maya's cheeks flush, her fork pausing mid-air, and I felt the heat rise within me. My heart raced as I struggled to find the right words. It wasn't merely curious questioning, it felt invasive, and in that moment, my protectiveness flared. I turned sharply to Lily, perhaps too sharply. "Can you just drop it, Lily? Not everyone wants their history dissected at the dinner table." The silence was thick, as if the air had been sucked out of the room, Maya's eyes wide with surprise and a flicker of relief, but I could also see her disappointment. I felt bad almost instantly for raising my voice, but I was too wrapped up in my determination to shield Maya from Lily's relentless probing. It felt like a necessary, albeit awkward, confrontation that I hoped would put an end to Lily's intrusive nature. After dinner, things were tense. Lily muttered a half-hearted apology, but I could see she didn't grasp the gravity of her actions. Maya's eyes, usually a vibrant mix of green and brown, appeared dulled by discomfort. She was sweet and didn't want to create waves, but I knew she felt uneasy around Lily, and I couldn't shake the guilt spiraling within me for yelling at someone who had meant no harm. That night, I lay awake, replaying the moment in my mind. I wondered if I had overreacted, if maybe I could have found a gentler way to enforce boundaries with Lily. I cared about her, too. She had always been helpful and supportive in past relationships, but this time it felt different. As weeks passed, I tried talking to Lily, attempting to mend whatever rift my outburst had created. But she remained distant, and every attempt I made seemed to elicit more frustration from her, which pushed me further into my shell. On the other hand, Maya and I grew closer as she began to confide in me more. Our conversations turned from light-hearted banter to deeper discussions about her past, her struggles, and her triumphs. I saw the person she truly was, a fighter under the surface, and that made me question whether enforcing boundaries with Lily had been worth it. Until one evening, after another dinner filled with awkward silences and strained jokes, Maya gently placed her hand on mine. She looked into my eyes and said, "I don't need you to protect me from her, I can handle it. But don't you dare push me away for her." It was a wake-up call, and I realized in that moment that I was being unfair to her for not trusting her capacity to handle the situation and unfair to Lily for not giving her the chance to admit her mistakes. That night, I decided to fix things, not just for me, but for Maya too. So, I called Lily, filled with newfound conviction, and invited her to join us for brunch that coming Sunday. When the day arrived, I took a deep breath and confronted her in front of Maya, articulating how I felt about her questions and how they affected Maya, not accusing, but inviting her to understand. Shockingly, she listened, really listened. I saw that familiar glimmer of understanding in her eyes, and that day, the air became lighter as we all discussed boundaries and respect in relationships. It felt liberating, like we were redefining our friendship for the better. Later that evening, as we departed, Lily hugged me and promised to be more mindful. Maya smiled warmly, and for the first time in months, I felt that comforting optimism about our relationships, a refreshing reminder of the complexities of friendships and love. A few weeks later, I received a message from Lily, asking about Maya's writing ambitions and how she could support her. I chuckled. It seemed Lily had genuinely dug deep in her heart to unpack her inquisitive nature. Life felt balanced again, reminding me of the delicate dance we all engage in when connecting with others, a dance, often complicated, yet ultimately worthwhile when met with honesty and understanding. I thought about the message while sitting at my desk, the late afternoon sun filtering through the blinds, casting long, warm shadows across the wooden surface. The way Lily had reached out felt like a gentle olive branch after a storm, something I had not anticipated but desperately needed. Her newfound interest in Maya's ambitions struck me as sincere, perhaps even a realization of her previous intrusiveness. I also couldn't shake off the feeling that my explosion of frustration had not just changed the dynamic of our relationships but had forced everyone, including myself, to take a step back and reassess boundaries. My feelings for Maya lingered in the back of my mind. They sparkled with a mix of pride and affection as I recalled how passionately she spoke about weaving her fears and dreams into narrative threads. I contemplated how hard she worked, often into the early hours of the morning, hunched over her laptop, chasing her elusive dreams. To see her finally getting recognition from conditions outside our little circle felt like fireworks within me, igniting a sense of gratitude for the seemingly chaotic path that had led us all here. When I presented Lily's message to Maya during our weekend coffee ritual, a comforting routine where laughter punctuated our still morning moments, she perked up, her eyes dancing with enthusiasm. "I think it's sweet," she exclaimed, the genuine warmth encapsulating her more than the caffeine ever could. As we discussed the best responses to send, I dug deeper into my thoughts. Maya, maybe this could encourage her to be more supportive rather than just nosy? My intent was to prod her to see it as a chance for healing, for growth, and a possible bridge forward. Throughout the week, my optimism clung to me, unwavering, as if I had gathered energy from the harmony that surrounded us. I began noticing small changes within our group dynamics. Lily's inquisitiveness shifted from being prying to a form of support. She began asking more about Maya's work in the positive light of genuine interest. During our usual game nights, instead of steering conversations toward the personal, Lily inquired about story ideas and offered her own interpretations of Maya's themes, which sparked delightful discussions and sparked inspirations. The months of tension seemed to evaporate, replaced by the sweetness of camaraderie regrowing gently. Yet, the trip was not without its nuances. My instinct to protect Maya sometimes felt overwhelming. I would catch myself watching Lily closely, waiting for signs of her curiosity morphing back into the invasive territory we had danced around before. Maya noticed the change in me, and during one quiet evening as we strolled along the lit-up streets, she turned to me, her expression serious yet soft. "You know, I can handle Lily," she assured, and in her voice lay the strength that had drawn me to her in the first place. Her curiosity comes from a good place now, she just needed a little nudge to realize how much more significant it is to listen than to pry. In that moment, I recognized the foundation Maya had built, not just for herself in her writing, but in our friendships too. I felt both admiration and resignation, a quiet acceptance that we all must learn, stumble, and yet eventually grow into a better version of ourselves. Thus, I put aside my protective instincts and focused instead on my own growth, fostering a healthy space where the line between support and nosiness could stand strong and clear. With time, I slowly allowed my defenses to lower. I was learning, just as Maya was, that relationships thrive not on the avoidance of conflict but through engagement and resolution. An unexpected evening rolled in when I checked my phone to find a notification. It was a group message from Maya, presenting a small gathering, an invitation to share her writing project with friends, including Lily, who had no idea she'd be involved. The anticipation mixed with nervous excitement fluttered in my chest as I read Maya's words aloud, the rhythm of her voice echoing through our cozy living room. "I'm inviting you all over next week for a reading and discussion. Bring your open minds, and maybe some snacks." As the date approached, I marveled at how much had transpired within a short span. Though apprehensive, the prospect of unearthing these unspoken conversations excited me. On the evening of the gathering, as friends settled into our living room, I sensed a comforting energy filling the air, like a soft blanket ready to wrap around us. Lily arrived promptly, her eagerness palpable, and I watched how she interacted with Maya. They exchanged anticipatory glances, and Lily listened intently as Maya shared her thoughts and insights on her work and the journey she took to get there. I felt proud, my heart swelling as I noticed the respectful curiosity Lily demonstrated, and perhaps it was then that I realized this night was not merely about Maya showcasing her writing, it was an exploration of friendship, vulnerability, and personal growth within the space we shared. And so, as Maya began to read, her voice resonating beautifully in the hushed room, I leaned back, enveloping myself in the warmth of connections rekindled, recognizing that life, in all its complexities, often finds a way to heal if we gather the courage to confront it. Many years down the line, those moments would live with me, whispering reminders of the growth found along this intricate journey of friendship and love. And in that beautiful small room filled with words, laughter, and understanding, we found our dance, soft, gentle, yet vibrant against the backdrop of all we had endured. As the years unfurled, life continued weaving its intricate tapestry, capturing threads of joy, sorrow, and unexpected revelations. Those evenings with Maya and Lily remained etched in my memory, like a favorite song whose melody, once heard, resonates forever. The three of us settled into a new rhythm. It felt as if we had taken each other's hands, stepping in sync to a beat of shared ambitions and mutual respect. Maya blossomed in her writing. She began getting published in local magazines and sharing her work at open mic nights. I watched her shine brighter with every word she shared, the girl who had once been hesitant now standing tall at the podium, radiating confidence, her stories captivating everyone around. Lily, too, found her own sense of purpose. Inspired by Maya's artistic journey, she explored her passion for photography. She would often invite us to join her on weekend shoots, the three of us wandering through streets, capturing candid moments of life. As we traipsed through parks, urban corners, and hidden alleyways, I became fascinated by how Lily would frame her shots, the way the light could transform an ordinary scene into something extraordinary. In those moments, it felt like we were painting a larger picture together, more than just a collection of memories, but a testament to how our keen interests intertwined beautifully. Still, lurking beneath the surface, I could feel the remnants of those early conflicts, whispers of residue from our past misunderstandings. Occasionally, even in our newfound harmony, my mind would drift back to that day when I had exploded at Lily for her intrusive curiosity, wondering if the shadows of it would ever truly fade. There would be moments when she would joke about her nosiness, laughter filling the air, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of needing to protect Maya, that instinct to shield her from anything that might taint her blossoming confidence. It was a delicate balance, the weight of our past pressing lightly on my shoulders, and yet I found comfort in knowing our bond was stronger than those fissures. One evening, as we gathered at our usual spot, a local cafe adorned with fairy lights and the aroma of fresh pastries wafting in the air, Maya surprised us both. She shared that she'd been accepted into a writing retreat, an opportunity she had been coveting for years. The excitement in her eyes was contagious, a spark igniting between us. "I can't believe it," she exclaimed, her voice ringing with disbelief. I actually made it. Lily and I erupted in joyous applause, our cheers mingling with the sound of clinking coffee cups and the soft hum of chatter surrounding us. Yet, as I basked in the delight of her moment, I could sense the undertow of fear that often came up during periods of immense personal growth, the fear of change. But what if it's not what I expect? Maya pondered aloud, her brows knitting together in concern. In that instant, it was easy for me to forget my silent reservations. I leaned closer. But what if it is? What if this is the beginning of something incredible? I responded, remembering how we had navigated through uncertainty together. And as Maya brunched a motivational speech into the air, Lily chimed in, reminding us both of the beauty that lies in risk. That evening, we took our time sipping on rich, dark coffee and indulging in sweet pastries. We exchanged dreams, fears, and heartbeats, creating a mosaic of our aspirations. It felt liberating to witness how far we had come while knowing the journey was far from over. Weeks passed, a gentle flow guiding us toward Maya's retreat date. In the hustle and bustle of preparing, I received a call from Maya after she had settled in at the retreat house. Her voice trembled with a mix of excitement and vulnerability. I thought I'd be terrified, but everyone here is so supportive. I feel my heart opening up in ways I never knew were possible. I could hear the warmth in her tone, a reflection of how far she had come. As I listened, I realized that she was carving out not just her identity as a writer but also reshaping how we all understood our connections to one another. When Maya returned, there was a lightness about her, a deeper understanding that seemed to transcend words. One evening, as we gathered on my porch, she shared stories of vulnerability shared among writers, of finding not just advocacy but community. That night, as the stars blossomed overhead, those shadows of past misunderstandings and echoes of our complex beginnings simply vanished amidst the laughter and the warmth of friendship. Reflecting on our journey, I understood our dance. Life is a dance, indeed, sometimes solo, sometimes in pairs, often a whirlwind of unpredictable turns and dips, but always brighter on the other side when the music stops. Time has its way of binding souls, if only we dare to unfurl our hearts. I cherished that, for the growth we had experienced was profound. Roots woven through the complexities of our relationships had forged a canopy of understanding and strength, a shelter in which we could hone our dreams uninhibited. And so, beneath the vastness of those shimmering stars, I held that night close, a vivid reminder to embrace all the intricacies threading through the heart of friendship, love, and shared journeys. When I first moved into my college dorm, I was filled with a mix of excitement and fear. Living away from home meant newfound freedom coupled with a whole lot of responsibility, but nothing quite prepared me for becoming a reluctant pet owner. My roommate, Jamie, had a long-haired tabby cat named Oliver, a fluffy bundle of mischief that seemed to have an uncanny ability to detect when I was vulnerable, and despite my initial hesitation toward sharing my space with an animal, I found that I could tolerate Oliver's antics, until that fateful Tuesday afternoon. It had been a long day filled with back-to-back classes and a looming assignment I was struggling to tackle. I returned to our dorm, a small space cluttered with books, clothes, and the ever-present scent of takeout. The moment I settled into my bed, ready to drown out the world with some music, I heard Jamie's voice carry through the thin walls as she chatted with friends. I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses, a stark contrast to the chaotic storm of thoughts whirling in my mind about deadlines and future plans. It wasn't long before Oliver, as if sensing my solitude, poked his head through the door, his wide yellow eyes fixed on me. "Not now, Oliver," I murmured, hoping to ward him off with my exhaustion, but, as it turns out, nothing could deter his determination. He wiggled through the slightly ajar door and hopped onto my bed, his presence filling me with a mixture of annoyance and reluctant affection. I gently shoved him off, trying to reclaim the boundaries I had set around my personal space, but I couldn't help but chuckle as he stared up at me, his ears twitching with every sound in the room. Then came the moment that seized my attention and left me questioning my sanity. Oliver, in a burst of unexpected empathy, nuzzled his face against my hand, then proceeded to bat at my fingers as if to say, "I'm really sorry for intruding, see how cute I am?" I blinked in disbelief, half wondering if I had gone mad or if this was just a cleverly plotted scheme orchestrated by my roommate. "You really think a cat can apologize?" I thought, lowering my hand hesitantly. The warmth of his fur was oddly comforting. Yet that comforting feeling quickly twisted into discomfort as Jamie burst into my room, beaming with pride for her well-behaved cat. "Do you see him apologizing?" she joked, and I couldn't help but feel a tight knot of frustration building in my chest. I had set boundaries for a reason. I needed that space to unwind, to think, and to not feel like I was babysitting a creature who had no concept of personal space. Maybe he's learned how to be more considerate, Jamie added, but the playful tone felt dismissive of my true predicament. The following day became a cycle of Oliver seeking me out, sitting on my desk as I tried to study, performing antics to win my affection, and despite my best efforts to keep him at bay, I found myself secretly charmed. However, a tipping point came when, the next day, he curled into my lap while I was engrossed in reading. I felt warmth radiating from him, and suddenly, it felt like Oliver had transformed into an emotional semaphore, signaling that I wasn't alone despite all the chaos around me. Just as soon as the joy of that connection blossomed, the reality of our living situation crashed into it. I realized that I wasn't just fighting against a cat, I was fighting against the inklings of companionship that came with it, the roots of connection that dug deep into my reserved heart that I had not anticipated. So when Oliver came to me yet again, his head bowing slightly as he gazed with those imploring eyes as if he understood my troubles, I took a breath and softly said, "You can come in, but only this once." In that moment, there was an undeniable shift, not just between me and Oliver, but within myself as well. It felt strangely cathartic to open my door, both literally and metaphorically, allowing this little creature to occupy not just my space but also my weary heart. As days turned into weeks, I found more peace in cohabiting with Jamie and Oliver than I could have ever imagined. I started sharing moments with Oliver where his purring soothed my anxieties, moments where Jamie and I would laugh as Oliver got himself tangled in random objects in the room, and before I knew it, our space felt less like a cold dormitory and more like home. My fears of losing control over my personal space diminished, and I learned to embrace the chaos that comes with companionship. In the end, I couldn't tell if I was the asshole for trying to maintain my boundaries or if I had simply been afraid of letting someone, or something, new into my life. Perhaps some apologies, whether from a person or a cat, don't need to be spoken at all. Update: a couple of months later, Jamie and I decided to adopt a second cat. In a way, it felt as if Oliver had guided me to accept that sometimes, it's okay to let in what makes us feel alive, especially when it comes in the form of warmth, purrs, and unexpected companionship. Reflecting back on that pivotal moment with Oliver still evokes a swirl of emotions within me. I sat on my bed, surrounded by familiar comforts, the soft glow of fairy lights illuminating the corners of my room, the gentle scent of lavender wafting through the air. Everything felt just as it had for weeks, a safe, predictable cocoon. After the strange encounter with Oliver, I had decided to uphold my boundaries, uncertain yet relieved at my resolve. But as the chill of fall drifted into winter, my heart began to soften, and I noticed the joyous familiarity of my life gradually morphing into something deeper. Jamie often shared stories, enthusiastic and filled with laughter, about Oliver's antics, how he would curiously poke around the fridge or chase after the sunlight that streamed through our windows each morning. I could feel the warmth in her voice, the way Oliver brought light into our shared space, and yet, I found myself struggling with the thought of letting go of my well-guarded solitude. Days turned into weeks, and while I maintained my distance from the cat, I also began to observe him quietly from a distance. His emerald eyes held a wisdom that I could sense, almost as if he understood my hesitation but remained unbothered by it. There was something almost enchanting about how he'd stretch languidly by the warmth of the radiator, echoing the simple tranquility I craved yet feared. Slowly, I began to warm to his presence, not so much in a grand gesture, but through those small, almost negligent interactions, like when I would stand in the kitchen and catch him watching me as if waiting for an invitation into my life. It surprised me how quickly I started to miss him during those moments I chose to withdraw into my room, loathing how I had created such a divide between us with my own fears. I found myself half-consciously leaving my door ajar at night, just to catch the rhythm of his soft padding outside, an unspoken invitation for him to join me should he so choose. Finally, when Jamie suggested we adopt a second cat, a rush of emotions flared within me: fear, excitement, and a surprising sense of relief. I realized then that perhaps my self-imposed barriers had been choking me much more than any intrusion of Oliver ever could. As Jamie collected supplies and eagerly researched rescue shelters, I felt a gentle nudge toward acceptance, the idea of companionship igniting something long dormant within me. When we first met our new feline friend, a timid little bundle of gray with striking blue eyes, it felt surreal in a way that made my heart race. As Jamie gently coaxed the shy kitten forward, I felt Oliver rub against my leg, almost as if he already understood his role in this new chapter. They seemed to know what it was like to be on the fringes of solitude. Maybe, just maybe, they had both offered me a chance to be part of their world, urging me to step outside the walls I had so carefully crafted. With time and patience, the two cats became inseparable companions, and in a way, they mirrored my own journey, growth born from vulnerability. They would sprawl across my lap as I began to read or watch TV, the tiny burbles of purrs resonating with a newfound symphony of warmth. I found joy in their elegance and mischief, how they filled the spaces I had once deliberately kept empty. A few evenings later, as we settled on the couch together, I glanced at Oliver, who nestled close beside my new kitten, and it struck me clear, they offered me not just companionship but a sense of belonging, a reassurance that life was meant to be shared, even with those who might initially feel foreign. Moving forward, I learned to trust my instincts, realizing that letting in love and connection also meant unearthing parts of myself I had neglected. The warmth of their presence became my nightly solace, and as I drifted off, I understood that sometimes, the greatest apologies are those we find in the simple act of letting go, of making space for what makes us feel alive, a realization I will carry with me long into the night. As we settled into our new routine with the two cats, Oliver and our new addition, Luna, I found a sense of peace creeping into my life that I hadn't anticipated. Initially, I worried that introducing another feline into our already chaotic household might upset the delicate balance we had achieved. But Luna, with her soft black fur and mischievous eyes that sparkled with playful curiosity, helped to soothe those fears. She immediately took to Oliver, who, despite his regal demeanor, slipped into the role of doting big brother almost instinctively. Watching them wrestle and chase one another around our small apartment filled me with a joy I had almost forgotten existed. Each evening, as I snuggled under my favorite blanket, I reveled in the sound of their joyful antics, the gentle thrum of purring united in a symphony of comfort that lulled me into tranquility. Luna, with her dynamic energy, brought an unexpected vibrancy to my once quiet nights. It felt like she had unlocked something within me, something that craved interaction, warmth, and connection. I began to share my thoughts and dreams aloud, sometimes to myself while I sat on the couch, the cats curled up beside me, and I realized it wasn't just a one-sided conversation. Their feline presence felt like a mirror reflecting my own growth. I found myself questioning what other parts of my life I had unknowingly restricted with self-imposed barriers, so I began allowing friends over more often, fostering deeper relationships and inviting them into the sanctuary I had created. Jamie noticed the change, too. We laughed more, shared quiet meals where silence felt comfortable rather than suffocating. It was as if Oliver and Luna were not simply pets but ambassadors of companionship, urging me to embrace vulnerability. The change wasn't always easy. There were moments when the weight of the world would push against my chest, reminding me of past moments when I had tucked myself away. A few months in, I had what I thought was an innocuous conversation with Jamie about my feelings. I shared how I had been reflecting on why I had initially refused Oliver's well-meant apology, recounting how I now understood that love sometimes requires us to open our doors, be they metaphorical or literal, to those we fear might disturb our carefully crafted solitude. Jamie nodded thoughtfully, offering me a smile that was understanding yet tinged with sadness, and in that moment, I recognized the strength within vulnerability. It was okay to feel afraid, it was okay to be uncertain. I realize now that receiving love, whether it's from a person or a furry companion, meant stepping into the unknown, but it is also where the most profound connections could blossom. The days became less about confrontation and more about connection. About sharing our lives openly rather than behind walls built from past hurts. Then came the night that brought everything together, a night that served as a reminder of the journey I had taken since Oliver's heartfelt apology. It was a brisk winter evening, and I settled down to enjoy a quiet night with a cup of tea. The world outside was painted in white, the street lamps casting a warm glow against the snow, while inside, my two cats curled contentedly on my legs. I flipped open my journal, a ritual I had embraced as I gathered my thoughts, documenting the emotional clarity that had graced my life in recent months. Suddenly, Oliver leapt from my lap onto the desk, his little paws tapping against the pages until he settled beside me, staring up with those piercing green eyes as if he were reading my mind. It struck me that there was a profound sense of gratitude swelling within me, gratitude not just for Oliver and Luna but for the whole journey that had brought me to this moment. I leaned down, giving Oliver a gentle scratch behind the ears, and said aloud, "Thank you for teaching me how to love again." When Luna nudged her head against my hand, insisting on her share of affection, I felt an overwhelming sense of connection, a comforting reminder that sometimes the most precious breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places. In the blend of their fuzzy warmth and the tranquil ambience of the room, I embraced the idea that letting go of boundaries could be liberating, not just for myself but for the new family we were building together. As I closed my journal and let the stillness envelop me, I understood that life thrives in shared warmth, and perhaps, the most genuine apologies come wrapped in the soft fur of those who teach us the value of presence, love, and belonging.